Hello everyone and welcome to Fetch and Query Params. So by the end of this lesson, I hope that each and every one of you will be able to make HTTP requests with Fetch. And read query params out of a URL. All right. So making HTTP requests with Fetch. All we're doing right now is GET requests. Those are pretty easy. They're a little tiny bit more complicated when we're doing posts or puts or deletes or whatever. But just a straight GET request, not that bad. So let's take a look at the syntax. So I'm going to copy, how about our events thing from yesterday. All right, so that's my HTML file. Nothing special, just an empty div. And I'm going to get a reference to it real quick. Beautiful. So to make an HTTP request, it's fetch and then the URL. Ta-da! So if I save that URL up here, could make it like pokeapi.co/api/v2/Pokemon/Bulbasaur. Okay, so I fetched that URL. Now, the next part is where it gets a little bit complicated. .then. So calling fetch with a URL evaluates to a promise. I can even save it as something. Let's say like that. And what you can do with promises is a chain off of them. So I could do like HTTP promise.then some function. So it'll be the resolved value and then whatever. What you see this written as almost all the time is like this. So let's talk about promises real quick. Promises are a pretty heady concept, and it's going to take you a while to get your head around them. Just take my word for that. But you don't need to be like 100% on promises just to use fetch. And in fact, I think that promises will make way more sense to you after having worked with fetch for a little bit. So the general idea is that with synchronous code, we just go one statement at a time, right? We do that statement, to the next statement, to the next statement, top to bottom. Even if we call a function or something, like that doesn't actually break the order of anything. We just call a function. That function does one statement at a time, and then eventually we're right back here. Okay, so that's synchronous code. Async code is quite a bit different. So with async code, something might be going top to bottom, and then it starts off something asynchronous. What's wild, so that could be like an HTTP request, that could be reading something out of your file system, that could be a lot of different things. This keeps going, and then at some point, this finishes and interrupts this thread, and we keep going. So why, Kyle? Why? Why did they do this to us? And the reason is that the thing that's running the web page in your computer, it's just one thing. So it does stuff in order. If you need to do something like make an HTTP request and wait for the response to come back, the only thing it can do, like waiting, is not running. So that means it can't do anything, which means your browser would freeze because it can't process your clicks, can't do anything else while it's waiting. We don't want that at all. We want it to multitask. So what we tell it to do is, that's fine. There's some stuff that I can do while I'm waiting for that to come back that's not dependent on this coming back. But then you also might have things that do depend on that being done and can't just keep going. So the way that we handle this stuff, like you can't add a Pokemon to the page if the HTTP request hasn't finished yet. So this stuff is then. That means whenever this thing before me finishes up, this is a dependent task. Stuff over here, not dependent. That if that HTTP request fails, the rest of this code isn't affected. So let's see what this looks like in actual code. So if I do something like this, where I have these dependent tasks, maybe I grab an image URL out of the response. I make a new image element. Set the source. Cool. And then maybe like append it to app. So all those are dependent tasks. I can't do anything with this unless I've parsed the response. Parsing the response is asynchronous also. I can't parse the response if I haven't made a request yet. So that's why it has two thens in there. Now there's other stuff that I could do. Maybe I have an H1 over here, and I just want to set its text content or something. Document query selector. Cool. So the order that this happens in, that statement executes. That statement executes. That statement executes. And then this one executes. And then whenever this fetch request is ready, we do that. And then whenever that thing finishes up, we do that. So, moment of truth, does it work? Oops. The new child is an ancestor of the parent. Uh-oh, that's not what we want. Oh, I'm trying to append it to itself. That'll do it. There we go. There's Bulbasaur. That's fetching. Ask me some questions about it.
That's not really a question, but like before, I was kind of confused of like when you would need to chain the thins. But that demonstration really helped me figure like, okay, well, if it's dependent on something that you have to wait for, that's when you add it to the thin chain.
Correct. Because yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with the HTTP request. Doesn't matter. And so we can have it just keep going while we're waiting for this. This stuff, the order matters. So we need to control the order.
Would this be a good time to ask about a loading indicator?
Sure.
Because that's part of our requirements for the Pokemon. But you know, hey, we're waiting for something to come back,
Sure.
so we want something to be displaying that it's loading while we're doing it.
Beautiful. So probably the easiest way to do something like that is, check this out. If I go over here and make an image, and then just get a loading spinner GIF. They got me. They know exactly what I'm trying to do. No. All right. Somewhere else. Beautiful. Okay. So what if I set this as the spinner for that? Let's start up a new server. Okay, so that just shows up there all the time, though. We don't want it to show up all the time. So what we can do, let's make a CSS file. And attach it. And then we're going to give this a class of spinner. And then over in the CSS, let's do something like width 300 pixels. It's a little bit better, maybe less. All right, so now I've got this spinner. Maybe I also want a hidden class that just does display none. Cool. So now in the JavaScript file, everything you're seeing right now is like what it does just when it loads the page. What we can do over here is whenever this comes back and we're ready to throw something in the page, we could grab that spinner and who can take a guess at what I'm about to do?
You're gonna add it to its class to hidden.
Yep, add to the class list. So if I refresh, you see it there for just a sec. I can also emulate like a slower connection That's this throttling thing up here. If I do, see, like regular 2G. Man, 2G's rough. Let's try that again. So it's waiting for that to come back, and there it is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very welcome. There's other ways to do it. That's probably the easiest. More questions about fetch?
So if you're using a return statement after fetch, really that's just not the end of the road. You can keep on going right after the return statement.
So this response here is whatever this return statement evaluates to. So like we could also call this like parsed response. Probably makes a little more sense. So yeah, whatever. So then always takes a function definition as its parameter, and the thing that will get passed into that function definition is whatever was returned from the last one. So the result of that is what this is. If I returned something else out of here, check it out. Logs. You still can't put anything after a return statement in the same function. But you can just make more chains.
And then I guess the last thing would be, since image URL and image is created within the scope of that function, whenever you're building out your HTML elements, I suppose you would need to do it all in this same block
Yes.
so that it's within scope.
Or, like, okay, so we have the image there. We could also return image. That works too. So if they did need to be in different scopes, you could chain them that way. But otherwise, yeah, all that needs to be in the same scope, or just explicitly passed into another one. Or we can make a helper function for that. That's totally reasonable too. We can make a function called like add Pokemon image that takes in a URL and then does everything else from there. So that would be like take this, that. We have the image URL, so we can just call add Pokemon image and pass in image URL to it. You'd even do something like that, like that, like that.
The question I have is, doing this over multiple, I'm not sure if I had the wrong API URL, or because when I tried to pull the 50 like they want in there, when I read the instructions on how to format the URL, it doesn't do anything when we're just doing it like this. And I don't know if that's because I'm not referencing it right with that response, that sprite dash front default or anything.
So you have to look
I
at the
guess.
response, because the problem you're probably having is the whole point of the assignment. So if I do this, that gives me, I think, a list of 20 by default. And that will apply. Let's just take a look at the response. Okay, so this is the thing that came back. Oh, what do you know? I don't see a sprites property on here. So I can't do sprites.frontDefault because this doesn't have a sprites object. What does it have? Well, it's got a count, how many things are in there. It has this next, which looks like a URL. And then it's got an array with 20 things in it. And so if I look at this array, what are each of the elements in the array? It's the name Bulbasaur, dun da da da, and a URL. All right, well, what's at the other end of that URL? Hey, what do you know? Sprites. Front default. So the point of the assignment is you have to use one of the URLs you get back to make more HTTP requests.
So it's almost like if you pull a folder from a pathway, you just get what you wanted for Pokemon. But if you want to go beyond that to the next folder, you have to do another fetch.
Yeah, you need to do fetches for each of the Pokemon. So that might be something like this. All right, so I fetch this. I get back this parsed response. But that parsed response, it had... Let's take a look at it again. It has this results array. All right, so what if I just look at parsed response.results? Okay. Now I have an array of objects. What I really need is an array of URLs. So how do I transform an array of 20 objects to an array of 20 URLs?
Map it.
Map it! So I could parsed response.results.map and take the URL out. And what do I get back? Hey, that looks like an array of URLs. All right, can I turn those into fetch requests? Why, yes, I can. In fact, if I want to take 20 URLs and turn them into 20 fetch requests.
Map it.
Map it! Cool, so if I look at those fetches, I should see a whole bunch of promises and a do. So, all right. Now this is like, remember this part of the video because I have content in the curriculum for this. It probably is just easier to see it. Promise.all. So Promise.all takes an array of promises and then tries to execute all of them at the same time and returns a promise. So we could say Promise.all fetches and return that. And this is like responses. Oh, we also probably want to parse these responses too, I'd imagine. Response. Cool. So over here in response land, let's take a look at what we get back. Hey, look at that. That's an array of 20 individual Pokemon. All right, well, if I wanted to turn each of those Pokemon into image elements, I could do something like, I have that add Pokemon image. So I could do like responses dot for each. And do like add Pokemon image response dot sprites dot front default. And then whenever that wraps up, get rid of the spinner. I might put the spinner first. Let's see what happened. Pew, pew, pew. Oh, it needs to be 50 of them? Oops, something I didn't like. Maybe it's not limit.
It's not, and it's a question mark.
Oh, come on. This is the advantage of pairing with a bunch of people. Thank you. That looks like 50 Pokemon to me. Ask me some questions.
Well, I feel like I'm loaded with questions today. So I can see how, like on the Pokemon assignment, we would be able to do all of this with like one HTML doc or two.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a requirement for which you'd like to see on that?
Yes. So I believe the Pokemon assignment is like we see all of these, and then you need to be able to like click on them and then just see one. Does that sound right? That might be video library.
Yeah.
Okay.
All on one HTML page.
Yep.
Doc. Okay.
Well, it's like there's one of them where you have to make links to the individual ones, and that's the query params part of this. Let's take a look.
I think this one, yeah, has a bunch of links, and then
you need to like get an individual one.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's take a look at how that would work. So if I have this, maybe instead of just making the image, I do something like make a container. And I set the inner HTML of that container to an anchor that has an image in it. Cool. So I've got that. And now I'm going to append that div whenever this gets called. There we go. All right. And so since I'm using a template string, I can interpolate some stuff. So instead of passing in the URL, I'm just going to take in the entire Pokemon. Like that. And I'll say that the image source is Pokemon.sprites.frontDefault. I could say that the alt text for that is Pokemon.name. And then, all right, this is the query params part of this. Then I could say something like, go to Pokemon.html and then add a query string that's like Pokemon equals Pokemon.name. Let's check out what that does to the HTML. Okay, so you can sort of see down at the bottom of my screen if I element inspect. Okay, it goes to Pokemon.html. The query string of Pokemon is Bulbasaur. Pokemon is Ivysaur. Pokemon is Venusaur. Questions about any of that?
Made it look so easy.
Well, I've been doing it 780 times longer than you, so I hope it gets easier over 780 times. All right. So so now I'm linking to this Pokemon.html page. Well, that needs to exist. Like so. While I'm at it, why don't I make a Pokemon.js file? And our Pokemon.html is going to be a lot like this one. And it'll have this h1 and sure, otherwise kind of work the same way. Pokemon.js. All right, so each of those links is going to take you to that page. So when I click this, went to Pokemon HTML, Pokemon is Bulbasaur. Now, nothing else is going to happen because we haven't written any scripts and stuff for that. We can borrow a lot of this logic for our Pokemon.js file. That's going to be kind of the same. This is called Pokemon now. This is going to be the same. This URL is going to be super different. We don't need to get every single Pokemon anymore. Don't need to do that one. In fact, let's just blow all that out. Okay, so to get this URL, or to build this URL out of the query string, first thing we need to do is read it. So it's going to be, shoot, I always forget this one. It's URL search params, I think. Yeah. Cool. Cool. So I'm going to get a new URL search params. Out of window.location. Window.location is whatever URL is currently showing up on your screen. Here, I'll prove it. That buddy right there. Now, the part that I want is Bulbasaur. So what I think I can do with this query string is do query string dot get Pokemon. It's key value pairs, right? Oh, that wasn't it. Let's see. And then it is, God, I could have sworn it was get. First value is with the given search parameter. Oh, shoot, it's not window.location. It's window dot something else. Let's take a look. So if we look at the different properties that we have here, none of those. Man, I could have sworn it was that one though. Let's take a look. All right, it gave me the class back. All right, let's go to the actual curriculum. You can tell how often I do this. There's some abstractions for this in the front-end frameworks that I use a little bit more often. Shoot. Did I not include the query params shit? God, I'm finding out all kinds of things. Sorry about that. Oh, that should be right. I called it Pokemon, right? Why does that come back as null? Oh, maybe I need to pass it into that first. New URL. And then URL.search. There we go. All right, so now I have this Bulbasaur string. And what I want to do is fetch to that same API but I want to use the thing that I pulled out of the query string. And then I want to parse the response and then take my parsed response and add it to the page. So if I do that, Pokemon.sprites is undefined. Well, let's see what we did get back. Okay, that came back. Looks like that has a sprites. Let's make sure we got it over here. Why did that log an element?
Is it because you're not passing parsed response into anything?
That is exactly what's happening. App is it's not defined. It's because it's not called app anymore. And this is exactly why I like putting that $sign in front. All right, there he is. And then spinner, class list, add. There we go. So now, putting it all together, go to this page. I see a big old list of Pokemon. If I go to Pidgey, now I'm on Pidgey's page. Ask me some questions. Ask me about my book.
Are you going to be adding that content to our reading?
Yeah, I'll give you. I definitely have query params content that I'll give you. It's basically what we just did, except I swear that extra URL step isn't in there. The general idea of it is exactly the same, though. You're reading a parameter out of the query string and then using it to build a URL.
Sounds good, because yeah, that's where I was stalled on the Pokemon API project.
Yep, there's the magic trick. More questions?
Can you go back to the HTML page for Pokemon? Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's exactly the same. Okay, cool.
So in the business, we call it a show page versus this, which would be called a list page or an index. Show page is like, it's the exact same HTML page that we'll use for any individual Pokemon. So even though there's 50 Pokemon over there, we only have one page for any of them because it's the same, it's the template basically for how you'd show one. And then the tricky thing with this one, we had to take the big list of Pokemon that we got back, map over the response to get URLs, turn those into fetches, and then Promise.all all of the fetches at the same time. Then when that resolves, eaching over them and adding them onto the page. And that is web app development in a nutshell. That is like, that's a simplified version of what the LMS is. Goes out and gets all the curriculum, maps through it, throws it on the page.
Your CSS, that the only thing you even have it for right now was just for that spinner, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
For this page, could you technically have just, in the JavaScript file itself, just defined those parameters for everything and not even use the CSS file, seeing as it's for one element?
Yes, but separation of concerns. If you remember when I was saying that anytime you're accessing the style property of a node directly, probably doing something wrong.
Okay.
This is right on the boundary of that. I might allow some playing with the display and stuff for a spinner. Spinner isn't really content. You can make an argument that it's purely a concern of the script. You should still probably put that in a CSS file.
Sounds good.
More questions?
I think I missed when you gave us the quick summary on what Promise.all does.
So Promise.all is a utility that takes an array of promises and then does all of them at the same time.
Okay.
So why isn't it letting me? I lost my little toolbar. Where'd my thing go? All right. There we go. Okay, so Promise.all, capital P, promise. Takes an array of like fetch URL1, fetch URL2. So it takes an array of those, and then Promise.all itself resolves to a promise. So you can either return it from a .then or .then off of it, and it'll be an array of all the responses in order. That's what Promise.all does. One other thing that's really easy to miss on that is when you're building those out, I think it's nice to put that first parsing that all of them need in there anyway. You could technically have done that with these two, but that's a little much for me. But yeah, just parsing the response. I think that's a perfectly fine thing to put in that map also.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if I don't want the first 50? What if I want like 800 to 850?
800 through 850? Then,
yeah.
I believe the one for that is offset. Let's see.
That is correct.
Nice. Yep, totally different set of Pokemon. So the way that you would find that out is if you go to pokeapi.co and then check out the docs. Go over to pagination. There we go. Limit and offset. And you actually get like that. These next things, you could use those to build your own links also, where like it just shows the first 20, and then this next URL that you get back from anything will give you a URL that gives you the next 20 or the previous 20.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, that has that next URL. If I do, and if I follow this one, now it's got a previous also. Pagination, that's called. Other questions? All right, let's head over to Code Sandbox. And I want you to just do a simple one of these. Get it under your fingers. Going to go over to Code Sandbox. You're going to make a vanilla. delete all the stuff in index.js. All right, so we have a div with the ID of app there. I want you to get Pikachu and make an image element, set the source, throw it in there. So the URL for that is this. See if you can fetch from the API, parse the response, create an image element. Actually, don't even worry about the image, just the name. Create a paragraph element, set its text content to the name of the Pokemon, and then append it to $app or pound app. The thing with the ID of app. All right, there's your assignment. Let's take 5 minutes on this. Go. Meanwhile, 30 seconds. All right, pencils down. If you'd be so kind as to give me a thumb scale of how that went. Thumbs down is, I don't got shit showing up. Thumbs up is, I see something. Throw them up, keep them up. Cool, cool. Mostly thumbs down. Mostly thumbs down. All right, so we're going to walk through this one together. Then we're going to do it again. So we fetch from the API. That's step one. Let me put that on top. We parse the response. Dot then takes one argument. It is a function that will get the result of the last thing. That is how you're not turning it into JSON. You're taking the JSON and turning it into a JavaScript object. And then take the response and then create a paragraph element. So that would be P, set its text content to the name of the Pokemon. Name of the Pokemon comes back in that response, and I know it's the name property, but if I didn't know that, I could log the response. Network error. Oh shoot, it might be blocked. Because it's not requesting it from my IP address, it's requesting it from Code Sandbox. Shoot, I wouldn't be surprised if they're banned. We'll see.
It's after you did that 2000 Pokemon poll.
Yeah, I'm personally responsible for getting Code Sandbox banned from the Pokemon API. All right, let's take a look at the... That's weird. It wouldn't even fire it off.
Is it supposed to be response.name?
It is, but I'm trying to show how I would get it from the log otherwise. I wonder if I did the API wrong or the URL wrong.
Okay, API.co.
Oh, come on, man.
I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, it's because I told you I told you what it was supposed to be. All right. God, it's just really turned into a day, isn't it? So if I didn't know what the response was supposed to be, I could get it right there. And anything else that I might want to pull out of this object. Okay, so it's response.name. So I could say p text content equals response.name. And then I can grab the app element set its text content, or append $P. And there it is. Questions about that? Fetch from the API, parse the response, make an element, set it to the name of the name and the parse response, make it show up on the page. Like so. Last questions before I make you do it again.
General question. Why does everything just say object in the console.log?
Like, if you do something that says like object,
Specifically, I'm looking at the Pokemon's abilities, and I know what they're supposed to be, and they're not supposed to be object.
like that? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
objects.
Sorry. The text is displayed for its name, but not its ability.
Right, because its ability is an object, not a string. And so if you want to
Okay.
see what the properties of that object are, you expand it out. And that says, all right, well, this is an object too. So I expand that out, and there's its name.
Okay. Makes sense. Just didn't click enough arrows.
What is the app referring to?
It is referring to this thing that was auto-generated from the HTML page. It could have been
Okay.
anything.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Cool, do it again. Time on the clock, and go. All right, pencils down. Same thing, thumb scale. Throw them up, hold them up. Sideways, up, up. Sideways, sideways, up. Sideways, down, up. Up, 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 up. Sideways, up, 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 up. All right, that's an improvement. Please ask me some questions about this. We'll do it one more time before we wrap.
I can't figure out what I did wrong.
Well, why don't you screen share and let's take a look together.
Been driving me crazy over here.
Maybe you went to .com instead of .co. I hear that's going around.
Changed it to co.
All right, looks good, looks good, looks good, looks good. All right, so let's see what the red squiggly's saying. Unexpected token, expected. So anytime we see that, it just means we have a syntax error. So something didn't get closed or got closed too much or something like that.
Maybe it should be here. Nope. Like that.
It looks like you have a colon at the end of the append thing instead of a semicolon.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely it.
Right here.
Yep. Ta-da!
Oh, that was driving me crazy.
you were just a little tail off.
Right.
All right. Last questions about fetch and query params and stuff before we break. By the way, I did find that content. It's under forms. I also have some Promise.all content that's in API integrations too. I'll probably move those around a little bit, but it is in there. Feel free to refer to those. Anything
So
else?
basically, if we wanted to throw an error, we just put it on the very end of the fetch request?
Bingo.
Okay.
So like, yeah, we didn't do error handling, but that looks like this. So if I do fetch URL, oh, actually, do I still have all the stuff? Yeah, there it is. So if I want to, like, let's say the internet goes down, Poke API falls over, whatever else, you just put a .catch at the end of everything. We could also have like built something up for that. So this could have been p.text content equals error.message. And then throw it on the page. Okay, so that has no errors. If I do that, maybe it helps. Nothing. What about Pikachu? There we go. So then it makes the error show up on the page. Or if like you don't want to expose that error, this could just be I wonder if that's how I do that on the LMS. It is.
Do you mind if I share real quick?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I feel like I must be just missing like something dumb because nothing shows up for me, but I feel like the code's right.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. P text content response.name appending P.
I think the
your
URL might be
URL.
missing a couple.
It's not linking.
Yeah,
It's
your
not linked.
URL. Take a look at the right after the HTTPS.
Yep, it's right there.
Right after the HTTPS, right here.
You
There's
got
a
colon,
standard
but you also need
to.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, there we go.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else we should talk about?
Mine's getting some errors.
Yeah, let's
happy
see.
if we could look at it. Yeah. No red squiggles to speak of, but still getting these errors even though we're not seeing any problems.
They might be old, so get rid of the... Okay, so see next to filter, kind of by the console, how there's that circle with the line through it?
Yes.
Click that, so that'll clear out your console. Get rid of that, like, lines 3 through 10. That's just kind of in our way.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, get rid of all that.
Even the
style,
element.
that's fine, yeah. Yeah, all right. Save it, which will also fix your indentation problem. Okay. So we got the URL. We're fetching the URL. We're parsing the response. Taking our parse response. Making a P element. Setting the text content.
It's the URL. It's the wrong URL.
Okay, so what's missing from the URL?
Pokemon.
There should be after V2, there should be another word Pokemon and then another backslash.
You got it.
Right there?
You got it. Hey!
Hey! Check that out. Cool. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Man, if you get one number wrong on the phone number, you end up talking to a totally different person.
I knew the hardest part of this lesson would be.
That's how we make friends.
Spelling.
Yeah,
Spelling.
That's how we make friends. That rocks. All right. Nothing else for the end of the day. Please take advantage of the queue. Otherwise, I'm going to try to get caught up on evaluation. I'll see you soon. Cheers.